Hey Data Fam, welcome back to our end-to-end analytics series where our goal is to study the concert history of the greatest rock band. Today we're going to be covering the data modeling piece finally, and in my opinion, one very important piece of data modeling is keeping your project organized. So what I'd like to do is just call your attention to the DBT best practice guide here, and they give great information on how they structure their project. So the data starts out in the staging layer, it moves to the intermediate layer, and then into the marts layer, which I like to call reporting just because I prefer that word. Here they give you some information on how they style their DBT models, including naming conventions. So here they have really great suggestions on how we should name fields and be consistent. So I will not bore you with going through all of the detail and reading documentation to you, but I do want to call to your attention that this very important resource is here. And if we all follow this style guide, if we all do our projects the same way, and then we go from place to place and our databases look the same, what a beautiful world that would be. So let's move on and take a look inside of the Y42 platform. Okay, so here we are inside of the Y42 platform. I noticed I canceled a build, so we have some errors going on and we have some stuff that's never materialized. So let me just build this kind of while I'm talking through here. And let's actually take a look at one of the most simplest DAGs that we have here. So this is the venues table, which is not used. I'll show you the query. So we're following the style guide of giving an import CTE. And then we are simply just casting some data types and renaming some columns, which is the whole purpose of your staging layer. Notice the naming convention here. It's always stg underscore, and then the name of the source, and then double underscore, and then the name of the thing. And then what I want to show you here is there are several tables that we brought into our data warehouse in video 1 of the series that ended up not getting used. So that includes venues, songs, doesn't go past the staging layer, shows, doesn't go past the staging layer. Finally, we get to set lists, which has a more robust DAG. And this is not actually from the raw source. This is something I created on my own that we'll look at in a second. And then even the artists. So actually everything that we brought in video 1 is not being used. Set lists I actually missed embarrassingly in video 1, and I'm just telling you that now. And this was the only table that I actually needed. So sometimes stuff like that happens when you're working on the fly. So anyhow, there's really not too much more to say about the staging layer. This basically covers it. So the staging layer, the point once again, is to cast your data types and rename your columns. And then we can do very simple calculations. Like here I did 1 as row count. So if I want to sum the rows, boom, I got a field there to do that. That's used in Tableau a lot. So Tableau has a native field for it, but this will come in handy in a few different ways. So then I want to move on to the next layer of my data warehouse, which is the intermediate layer. So the purpose of the intermediate layer is for the BI developers, or the analytics engineer, as we call them nowadays, to do a bunch of transformations, to do a lot of joins and filtering, and a lot of complex business logic that they don't necessarily need the end users to see. So these are tables and views, usually views in the intermediate layer. And I should mention, in the staging layer, it should always be materialized as views because you don't need to waste a table there. Back to intermediate layer. These are tables and views, but normally views that you want to hide from your business users but are critical for you as an analytics engineer. Now, for me, I don't have a lot going on here because it's a pretty simple project, but I have this model called INT for intermediate show date gap, which just calculates the number of shows since a particular show. Let me see if I can actually data preview here. Hopefully it comes up pretty quick. Okay, before we get too much further explaining the intermediate layer and the reporting layer, I just need to take a pause here and explain something. There's some requirements that I have for this project in my head, which I haven't really kind of explained a lot yet, which is kind of what I want the dashboard to do. So what I want the dashboard to be able to do is present the users of the dashboard, the fans, a list, several lists of songs, which might be the next opener or might be the next encore. And there are various ways that we might approach that, or various ways we might come up with these lists, but certainly things that are important is like whether or not a song is an encore or like has been one in the past, whether or not it's been an opener in the past, how long has it been since they've opened with that, how long has it been since they've played that. So there's a few fields in the data. I jumped over to Tableau because it's just a little bit easier. So let's just show you what the last two shows looked like in the data. So we have shows, we have song name, and it's just going to come in some random order now. So what we do to order the song so we know what order they actually played it in is there's this field called position. So actually, let's scoot it here first just so you can see that right now the songs are sorting like alphabetically. I don't want that. Here's position. And if it's position 1 for a given date, that's an opener. Or you don't even have to consider the date. If it's ever position 1, doesn't matter. There's nothing else you have to check. That's an opener. Then how do I know if it's a second set opener or an encore opener or an encore at all? So there's this field called set, which is showing here with uppercase. Interesting. So here we can see that this song was a second set opener because it is the lowest number within set 2. And this song here, Joy, was an encore opener because it is the lowest number within the encore. And then all of these 1, 2, 3, 4 songs would be considered encores on this date. So what I need to do is come up with a collection of songs that have ever been encores, that have ever been openers, second set openers, and so on. So that's kind of the goal of some of the data modeling here. And now that you understand that these fields, set, position, show date, and then also, let's just do gap for a second. I'm not sure what's going to happen here, actually. Okay. So if the data modeling, I forget if I connected to an intermediate table, I actually don't know which table I connected to here, but this is saying that they haven't played this song in 7 shows. They haven't played this song in 131 shows, etc. So we're going to be leveraging this in the final dashboard as well. Okay, back to our discussion on the intermediate layer. So I think, let me just check the DAG to make sure I explain these in the order that they actually appear. So this first one called show date gap, all it's doing is it's taking just the dates and sorting them and giving them a number. Like the most recent date was 0 shows ago. The second most recent date was 1 show ago. You obviously cannot do date diff calculations here. You have to count them, basically. You have to count the number of shows that were there. This is actually strange. I've never seen this screen lag before, ever. Okay, here it is. So something was just needed to be tickled there. So cool, everything's working as expected here. So this show date gap, I am taking the set list table. I am reducing the columns that we're analyzing from the set list table to just the show date. Okay, I'm grouping by the show date. And then I'm just doing a simple calculation that says sort those show dates. And the first one, -1 from all of it, but so the first one becomes the 0th record, and then so on. And then here, I need some information about each one of the songs. I'm going to do a quick data preview here. Okay, so basically what we're coming up here is the song ID, the song, the last time they played it, the number of times they played it, the debut date, and the gap. And I just want to say something here, which if you're actually studying this data along with me, which I doubt that you are, but These fields are actually available on the songs table, but I wanted to make this commitment that I only use the setlist table because I wanted my final dashboard DAG to all come from one source. So I reinvented them here. Um, so these KPIs are calculated when they didn't need to be calculated, but it made my DAG very simple. So let me just show you. So again, the dashboard is the exposure here. And this dashboard has an extremely simple DAG, and it traces back to a single source. That was important to me for this project because it just makes it real pretty and very easy to explain. But I had to do some extra typing in order to make that happen. Awesome. So let's move on to our reporting layer. There are only two models in our reporting layer. We have the actual set list, which is just every date, every show, every song. And then we have something called song stats. And song stats is basically consuming the set list model and creating statistics on it. So let's look at the more simple model first. Yeah, there's very little happening here. I'm going to shrink that down, and let's just talk through kind of the style here and the code itself. So I'm referencing the staging model. I'm filtering right away just to the artist's name, and there's this field called is excluded, which means certain shows were excluded from the stats. So for example, when they played on David Letterman, that gets excluded from the stats because you weren't there, right? So they don't, that's basically why. I have this eras table, which I haven't explained yet, but basically what this is, so certain date ranges within the band's history are associated with certain eras. So from the 80s all the way through, I think the late 90s was considered the 1.0 era. And then there was like early 2000s until they broke up again was considered like the 2.0 era. And then from 2009 until really current day is the way I'm representing it in this data, it's considered the 3.0 era. So for each show, I want to know what era that show happened in. And in my dashboard, in addition to this like kind of prediction thing, another thing that I want to do in the dashboard, a separate page of the dashboard, is show the history of the band and how kind of they evolved throughout the eras. So there'll be like a 1.0, 2.0, 3.0 section, and you can see what songs were most popular during then, which venues, which locations, which cities and states, months that they played in, all of this stuff. You can see how that kind of evolved through the eras. So that is the set list table. Then finally, I have my song stats table. And my song stats table, let me just scroll down to the final select statement. Actually, it's going to be nicer for you guys in the data preview mode. So let's preview this. Okay, here's the preview. Shrink this back up. So this table is not particularly wide, but this has all of the stats that I talked about when I was showing you the Tableau model. Now I've actually calculated them. So what's the easiest way just to show a list of columns without scrolling back and forth? That might be, so, okay. So let's just kind of look at a few of them and then we'll wrap up this section. So we have the song and the song ID, the number of total times that song was played, the last date they played it, whether or not it's a show opener. So we have true and false for each song. So let's just look at one row. So Prince Caspian. I actually wonder. No, okay. I was seeing if I can just right click and filter. Okay. So it's an opener. It's considered an opener, but it's a very rare opener. It's only opened 4 times. And it hasn't been an opener in 303 shows. So even though it hasn't been an opener a long time, this would come very low to my list of guesses on what would be an opener, just because the number of times that it's been an opener is extremely small. So the way I would predict an opener is if it's an extremely popular opener, it's like in the top 20 to 30 songs of openers, and it hasn't been an opener in like 30 shows. It's that's going to come right to the top of my list. That's the way I'm kind of thinking through this here. Then we have the same stats repeated for the second set. and we have the same stats repeated for the encores and for encore openers. So that's all of the fields that I have in my song stats model, and that's what's going to drive my Tableau dashboard. The last thing that I want to call out about data modeling is it's important to document as you go along. We did talk a little bit about documentation in the last video, but I've tried pretty hard during this project that every model gets a model description as I develop it. As I click through these models, you can see that everything is documented with a description, tags, a tier, and a status. And all of my reporting models are in draft status because I haven't used them in Tableau yet, and I don't know that they're actually correct. Even my intermediate models are in draft status, but my staging models they're definitely correct because I use Airbyte to load the data, and Airbyte is a wonderful product and I know it works. So I have the status of verified, and I have tier 1 means that it's used in the DAG, and anything other than tier 1 is not used. So I think it's tier 3. You could see they're not used in the main DAG. They're not used in the dashboard. They don't belong to the DAG of the dashboard. And I guess one more thing just about data modeling is it is important to document your exposures. We talked a little bit about that in the last video. Y42 makes it fun and easy to document your exposures. If you've ever done this in DBT, it's a little tedious. You got to type through a YAML file. I bet if you are a DBT developer, I bet you're not documenting your exposures because it is tedious. Maybe you are, maybe you're great, but here in Y42, it's so easy to document your exposures. If I have another model that's going to be exposed to a dashboard, and maybe it's this dashboard, like, hey, maybe I'm going to throw that songs table into my dashboard. All I have to do is click here, use the drop-down menu, and I would do like STG songs, save, and now STG songs would be included in my exposure. And then when I build the DAG for that exposure, it would also be, here, can I scoot this? Yeah. So now the songs table is also there. Well, thanks for joining this section, this data modeling video. A friend of mine once said there's nothing worse than someone talking at you about code. So hopefully it wasn't too terrible. If you're still with me at this point, again, I want to thank you so much for your attention. It is an honor to do this for you. And I'm really looking forward to seeing you in the Tableau video. And the way I'm thinking about breaking down the Tableau video is I want to do like a watch me viz for a few minutes, just like so you can see my thought process as I'm looking at the data in Tableau for the first time, and then kind of like then pause it, work on it for an hour so I can show you what I came up with after an hour, and then do another video after I've worked on it for like 20 hours. That way you get a feel for what does a 1 hour dashboard look like and what does like a 20-hour dashboard look like. And of course, they're night and day, very different. So that's it. See you later, everyone. Thanks a lot. Bye.